I'm done. The next class is January 24th, Intro to Music of Fundamentals. You have your page numbers. Um, is there any comment or question?
So music came from religion, from like churches. Is that where it began?
Well, music didn't come from there. The notation came from there. Music. See, the thing is, that's a good question. All the time, these monks are singing hymns written 500 years ago in the Holy Land at their monastic services. Is that what the hunter on the hill is singing in the bar rooms and the inns and the taverns and in the fields? No, it's not. But that music didn't get written down. Now, what we will do very soon, thanks for asking that, you're about 2 weeks ahead of me, or you're about a week ahead of me. You're 2 classes ahead of me. What we will soon discover is, although the purpose of the music notation was to preserve the sacred music, and not even, the music wasn't even that important. It was the texts that were important. The purpose of the sacred music was to glorify the sacred texts, and so we had to have the same tunes sung in every church in Europe. The purpose of the music was to preserve the sacred texts, but that doesn't mean that that's the only kind of music that was being made. There was lots of people who were dancing jigs out in the street. There were hunting songs, there were work songs, and all those things eventually work their way into the church music. But like I say, you're about 2 classes ahead of me. So it's not fair to say that music comes from religion, although most people think that music is a religious act, and including me. But it was the reason why did the church end up being the one to do this? Well, what if somebody else wanted to be the same? What does the church have over anybody else? And the other, huh?
Power.
Another word for power. Money. The church had the money, and they had. See, the thing is, if you go back to the medieval period, a young person had 3 possibilities. He could stay living on the land he was born on and never travel 25 miles from wherever he was born for his whole life. He could go into the military. In the medieval period, the military was kind of like hockey. It was a seasonal activity, and if you got killed, that was your bad luck. I mean, people get killed playing hockey too, But they would, they would. In the spring, they would go out and fight a war with somebody, and then that was over. But they got to, wear armor, and they got to have a horse, and they got fed pretty well. Or you could join the church. A lot of young people, mostly men, but there were women too, joined up with the church because it was the only growth industry available. It wasn't necessarily out of religious fervor. It was because it was a life option. And this business about celibacy and abstinence and stuff like that. Forget about it. They took apart this wall in this convent some years ago, and they found buried in this wall hundreds of little baby skeletons. These nuns were not exactly unworldly. So the fact that you became a monk or a nun didn't mean necessarily that you were denied worldly pleasures. It just meant that you had to be cool about it. So the medieval period is a kind of a raunchy period in that way. There's lots of risque things that went on, but there was always this overarching philosophy that God is at the root of all things and everything else springs from that. And they returned their artistic inspirations back to the church from whence it basically originated, if that makes any sense.
Jen.
I will walk
you were
right in
saying-
there and tell them this stuff is missing. Yes, what?
Okay. You were saying that Western monks developed the neum is the cliche, right?
Yes.
It's the first type of notes.
The neum is a kind of a symbolic representation of that cliche, yes.
And the monks developed that?
Yes.
Okay.
In the monasteries over a period of many years. These original how we study medieval music is these manuscripts are created at this monastery or that monastery or this monastery, and they wind up in museums or libraries in different places in Europe, and they sit there and turn into old, crusty, little crumbly pieces of paper over 100 years, and then about 1850 or so, it wasn't until hundreds of years after this music ceased to exist, really, or ceased to be actively studied, that musicology was invented, and people started going back into these old backroom libraries. And remember in Lord of the Rings when Gandalf goes into these ancient libraries and looks for these old papers, trying to find the legend of Isildur and stuff like that. That's kind of the situation where these old manuscripts were kept. So each of the old manuscripts will contain maybe 100, 200, 300 examples of music notation, and that's where we have derived our library of music. And again, there's music in the style written in Rome, and then I keep mentioning Rome and Milan as two of the basic ones, and then in Paris. Those three are probably the biggest libraries. I think maybe in Munich and Berlin as well. Okay, something else? Okay, then, let's quit. This has been totally fun. Thanks very much, and make sure you get your book. Sorry? Somebody say something?
No, we're good.
Okay, let's quit.